Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I had convinced myself he was asleep. The apartment had gone quiet, too quiet, and in that stillness every sound felt louder than it should. My breath, the soft rustle of fabric, the faint hum of the night pressing against the windows. I should have known better. He was never a heavy sleeper, especially not after the tense conversation we'd had earlier, the one that left the air between us charged in a way neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, my heartbeat already fluttering from the weight of unspoken thoughts. My skin felt warm, my mind restless. I closed my eyes and let my fingers trail slowly along the inside of my thigh, just enough to quiet the ache of loneliness, not enough to be reckless. A soft sound escaped me before I could stop it, barely a whisper, but in the stillness of the night it felt far too loud. I bit my lip. It's fine, he's asleep. That's what I kept telling myself. Then something shifted. A faint creak. A change in the air. The kind of subtle movement you only notice when you're already on edge. My eyes opened, and that's when I saw it. A shadow in the doorway. Tall. Still. Watching. My breath caught in my throat. My heart flipped so hard it almost hurt. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Neither of us even breathed. The dim hallway light traced the outline of his shoulders, the quiet rise and fall of his chest. He wasn't moving closer, but he wasn't stepping away either. My pulse pounded in my ears. Heat rose to my cheeks. A strange mix of embarrassment and an undeniable spark trembled inside me. He wasn't supposed to be awake. He wasn't supposed to be standing there. And he definitely wasn't supposed to be looking at me like that, like he had just walked into a moment he shouldn't have seen but couldn't tear himself away from. I swallowed hard, the air thick between us. How long have you been there? I whispered, barely audible. He didn't answer. He just held my gaze, steady, unblinking, and unbearably intense, like he was waiting for me to make the next move. And suddenly, everything felt different. Dangerous. Magnetic. I couldn't decide whether to stand up, cover myself, or confront him. All I knew was that something had shifted between us, and whatever happened next, neither of us could pretend it didn't mean something. The silence stretched. One step from him could change everything. And I wasn't sure if I wanted him to take it, or if I wanted to stop myself from hoping he would. The air between us didn't settle after that night, it only grew heavier. He avoided mentioning what he saw, and I pretended nothing had happened, but every passing moment felt threaded with something we hadn't named yet. It wasn't new, not really. That tension had been there long before the doorway incident, simmering beneath polite conversations, accidental touches, and the kind of eye contact that held just a little too long. He had moved into the apartment months ago, not because he needed a place, but because life had pushed him into a corner. He was trying to rebuild, searching for direction, carrying more weight on his shoulders than someone his age should. I offered him a room because he trusted me, and because I cared more than I admitted, even to myself. But caring became complicated. Some nights he would stay up late on the couch, staring at the ceiling like he was fighting something inside. I'd bring him tea, our fingers brushing for a second too long, and he'd give me that soft half-smile that always made my chest tighten. Other nights I'd wake to the sound of him pacing quietly in the kitchen, the glow of the fridge reflecting the exhaustion in his eyes. We lived in the same space, yet there were miles of unspoken thoughts between us. One evening, after a long day that left me drained, he found me sitting on the balcony. The sun had just set, the sky a soft bruised purple. He stepped out slowly, leaning against the railing beside me, his shoulder inches from mine. "You okay?" he asked gently. His voice always softened when he spoke to me, too gentle, too careful. Just tired, I murmured. He didn't believe me, I could feel it. He always noticed the things I tried to hide. You've been distant, he said finally, eyes fixed on the city lights. Did I do something? My breath hitched. The question echoed louder than it should have. My mind flashed back to the night in the doorway, the way he looked at me, the way my heart nearly stopped. I wanted to tell him that I was the one who didn't know how to act around him anymore. That the way he cared, quietly, consistently, made something inside me unravel. Instead, I shook my head. No. You didn't do anything. He turned toward me then, his face close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. Then why do I feel like you're scared of me now? The words struck deeper than he knew. I wasn't scared of him. I was scared of what I felt when he was near. Scared of the warmth, the pull, the way the world seemed to narrow when he looked at me like that. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words tangled in my throat. Before I could speak, a soft breeze swept across the balcony, brushing my hair across my cheek. He reached up, hesitant, gentle, and tucked the loose strand behind my ear. Just a simple touch. But it sent a shiver through me that I couldn't hide. He noticed. And for a long moment, neither of us looked away. Something between us was shifting again, slowly, dangerously, and somewhere deep inside, I knew there was no turning back. The days that followed felt like walking on a fault line, every step steady on the outside, but trembling underneath. The balcony moment hadn't been small, it had shifted something we were both too afraid to name out loud. And once a boundary cracks, it never truly goes back to the way it was. He started acting differently. Not openly. Never directly. But in subtle, almost accidental ways that made my pulse jump when I least expected it. When I walked into the kitchen, he was already there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching me with a look he tried to hide. When I passed by him in the hallway, he didn't move away quickly like he used to. Instead he hesitated, letting my shoulder brush his, just enough to feel the warmth of him. And then came the jealousy. I didn't expect it from him, not until the night my coworker dropped me home. It was innocent, completely normal. The car pulled up, we exchanged a polite goodbye, and I stepped out. But the moment I looked toward the building entrance, he was already standing there under the porch light, hands in his pockets, jaw tense. He wasn't greeting me. He was waiting. "You're late," he said quietly. I blinked. "It's only 10. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted to the car pulling away, then back to me, sharper, darker than his usual softness. "He seems close to you," he murmured. My heart gave a sharp, unexpected twist. "He's just a friend." "Does he touch you like one?" His voice was low, calm, but edged with something raw and unguarded. The question hit me harder than it should have. Heat rushed to my cheeks, not from guilt, but from the intensity in his eyes. The kind of look that said he'd been holding something in for far too long. "He doesn't touch me at all," I whispered. Something in him eased, only slightly, but enough for him to step closer. Too close. "So you'd tell me," he said softly, "if someone else was trying to take your attention?" His words hung in the air, bold and trembling with everything he wasn't saying. The space between us felt electric, almost dangerous. My breath hitched as his hand brushed my arm, unintentional or not, I couldn't tell. But the touch lingered, warm and possessive in a way that made my pulse stumble. I should have stepped back. But I didn't. Because deep down, the truth was becoming harder to deny. We weren't pretending anymore. Not really. And if one more moment broke between us, I wasn't sure either of us would be able to stop what was coming next. The night had a weight to it, thick and almost electric, as if the city outside had paused just for us. I didn't know how it had come to this, how a simple evening had spiraled into a tension so intense that each glance, each movement felt like a gamble. He had asked me to meet him in the living room. Just for a minute, he said, but the air between us told a different story. The apartment was quiet, shadows pooling in corners, lights dim just enough to blur the lines between caution and desire. I entered, heart hammering in my chest, every step a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He was already there, leaning against the edge of the couch, hands tucked casually into his pockets, but the casualness didn't fool me. His eyes tracked me like he'd been counting every step, every breath I took since the moment I opened the door. I tried to focus on something, anything, but the energy between us pulled me in. His presence filled the room, close enough that the faint scent of his cologne brushed against me, warm and intoxicating. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the subtle shiver down my spine that came with being this near someone you weren't supposed to want so badly. "Why did you ask me here?" I managed, my voice soft but tense. "Because we need to talk," he said, and his words lingered, heavy with unsaid things. He stepped closer, and suddenly the space between us felt dangerous. Or maybe, we just need to stop talking for a minute. My breath hitched. That look in his eyes, intense, hungry, questioning, made it impossible to think clearly. My fingers itched to reach out, to bridge the space, but I froze. Every instinct screamed to pull back, yet another part of me ached to close the gap entirely. The tension was unbearable. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating, each second an eternity. The city lights outside glimmered through the blinds, casting patterns across his face, highlighting the longing I could feel radiating off him. And then, just as I thought I might lose all sense of control, his hand hovered near mine. Inches away. Trembling slightly, not from hesitation, but from something far deeper. The air seemed to crackle around us, and I realized with a jolt that in that suspended moment, nothing could stay the same. And just as our fingers were about to brush, the doorbell rang. The doorbell echoed like a gunshot through the apartment, shattering the charged silence between us. My heart skipped, my chest tight, and I turned toward the door, confused and anxious. He froze beside me, jaw tight, eyes dark with a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't immediately place. "It's probably just a package," he said, though the tension in his voice betrayed him. I hesitated, but the instinct to see what, or who, it was overrode me. I walked to the door, my pulse hammering like a drum. As I opened it, the hallway light spilled in, harsh and unforgiving, and standing there was someone I didn't expect. Her. A woman I recognized immediately, someone from his past, someone I thought belonged only in memories he never shared. And in that instant, the air in the room shifted. Everything we had been tiptoeing around, all the tension, all the hidden longing, seemed to hang by a thread. I didn't know you'd be here," he said, his voice low but strained. She looked at me, her expression unreadable, but her eyes flicked toward him in a way that made something deep inside me twist. My chest tightened, not with jealousy exactly, but with a realization that the closeness we'd been building, the fragile intimacy, could shatter in a heartbeat. "I came to talk," she said finally. "I didn't expect this." The words landed heavily, and for a moment, we all stood frozen, three people suspended in a tension that felt almost electric. My mind raced, heart thrumming with a mix of fear and adrenaline. And then he stepped forward, finally speaking with the intensity I'd come to know. "This isn't about the past," he said firmly, voice trembling with raw emotion. "You need to know something. I've kept it from you because I was scared. Scared of how much I care about you. Scared of what it means." His eyes met mine, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The hallway, the unexpected visitor, the tension of the city outside, it was all gone. There was only him, standing there with a vulnerability that made my chest ache. I opened my mouth to respond, to reassure him, to reach for the truth in his confession, but before I could, she said something that made my blood run cold. You too, you've been hiding something from me, haven't you? Her voice wasn't accusatory, it was knowing, sharp, and somehow personal. My heart raced, caught between fear and desire. The truth was out now, half of it, anyway, and the connection between us, the energy that had been building in the shadows of the apartment, had never felt more real or more dangerous. He took a step toward me, closer than ever, his hand brushing against mine, not by accident, but intentionally. The tension was unbearable, the attraction undeniable. And in that moment, I realized, nothing would ever be the same. The tension in the apartment had reached its peak, and there was no escaping it. The visitor from his past had left, but the echo of her presence lingered, a silent reminder of how fragile trust and desire could be. We were left alone, the air thick, the silence heavy with everything we hadn't said. He sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair, his eyes dark and troubled. I stood a few feet away, unsure whether to sit or pace, my chest tight with adrenaline and emotion. Finally, he spoke, his voice raw. I can't keep pretending, not anymore, he said. I've been holding back because I thought I was protecting us. But I can't hide how I feel. Not from you. My breath caught. I'd felt it too, the pull, the tension, the unspoken desire, but admitting it now made everything feel fragile, like we were standing on the edge of something too dangerous to fully see. Then say it, I whispered, stepping closer despite the fear curling in my stomach. Say what you feel before you regret it. He looked up at me, eyes shining with a mixture of vulnerability and boldness. I care about you. More than I should. More than I've ever let myself admit. The words struck me with the force of truth. The walls I'd built around myself trembled. My hands, which had been clenching at my sides, relaxed slightly as I took a step forward. I feel the same, I admitted, my voice trembling, both from relief and the risk of saying it out loud. We were closer now, the space between us charged and unspoken. And yet, the moment wasn't soft or easy. It was raw, full of all the tension, mistakes, and misunderstandings that had built up over months. He reached out, a hesitant but determined gesture, taking my hand in his. The warmth of his touch grounded me, and suddenly the energy between us shifted. We weren't hiding anymore. We weren't tiptoeing around feelings that had grown too big to ignore. I don't care about the past, I whispered, leaning into the connection we'd been denying. I care about now, about us. His grip tightened slightly, a silent promise. And just like that, the walls between us fell away, leaving only honesty, closeness, and the undeniable spark that had been waiting for this moment. We laughed softly, almost nervously, as relief and joy mingled with the lingering tension. The storm had passed, but the electricity remained, a quiet, steady thrum that promised new beginnings and a chance to explore what we'd almost let slip away. The apartment no longer felt like a place of suspense. It felt like a space where choices had consequences, but also where courage and honesty could create something real. And as we finally settled near each other, hands still entwined, hearts still racing, I knew that whatever came next, it would be ours, and it would be worth every risk. The apartment was quiet now, but it was no longer heavy. The air felt lighter, softer, like a storm had passed and left the space charged with warmth instead of tension. We sat together on the couch, side by side, our fingers interlaced, hearts still echoing the excitement of honesty finally spoken. I leaned my head lightly on his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and for the first time in months, I didn't have to guard my thoughts or words. We'd faced the risks, confronted the truths, and come out closer because of it. He glanced down at me, a gentle smile curving his lips. I never thought we'd get here, he admitted softly. I mean, I knew I wanted this, wanted you, but I was scared. I pressed a light kiss to his temple, careful yet full of meaning. Scared, I whispered, because it matters. Because we matter. The simplicity of the statement hung between us, heavier than any grand confession could be. It wasn't about reckless passion or fleeting desire, it was about connection, trust, and the quiet courage to finally let ourselves be seen. We laughed softly at the awkward silence that followed, a shared moment of relief. It felt like reclaiming something we had almost let slip away. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine, and I could feel the warmth of him, steady and reassuring. "Promise me something," he murmured, his voice low, almost trembling. "Anything," I replied without hesitation. "That we don't hold back anymore. No more pretending. No more fears standing in our way." I smiled, nodding. "I promise." The apartment, the city, even the night outside, the world seemed to fade away. There was only the quiet certainty of being together, a bond forged in vulnerability and trust, stronger than any fleeting distraction or old mistake. And in that moment, as our fingers entwined and our foreheads touched, I realized that love didn't have to be loud to be profound. It could be patient, gentle, and resilient. It could be two people choosing each other in the quiet aftermath of chaos, and that choice could feel like the most extraordinary thing in the world. We stayed that way for a long time, letting the peace and the connection settle over us. There were no dramatic gestures or grand declarations, just closeness, trust, and the quiet certainty that we had found something worth holding on to. And as I closed my eyes, resting against him, I knew this was only the beginning. Whatever challenges came next, we would face them together. Because after all the tension, the risk, and the longing, we had finally found our way to each other.